Presenting the ultimate grade of beef.
Previously, our protagonist Suma not only proved his worth to one of the Elite 10, but also announced to the whole school he would be taking over. Coming to test these skills is Mito, a busty young woman who has taken a certain liking to Suma. Despite her appearance, she has a real knack for cooking, making her a worthy opponent of Suma. Episode 7. Currently, we are looking at the busty and joyful Mito, who prepares for her cooking battle against Suma. After finding a bra that fits her massive rack, she decides she is ready to take on Suma. Later that day, some students talk amongst themselves about Suma, wondering if he has what it takes to challenge Mito. Kanichi, on the other hand, is sure of the dish they cooked up, knowing Suma has the battle in his palms. Megumi, on the other hand, gets nervous from just peeking outside at the onlookers. Suma, however, shows no signs of being nervous, assuring Megumi he has what it takes. This shows her that despite him not being renowned within the school, he still holds his own pride. A young girl takes the stage named Urara, welcomes everyone to the event. While she captures the hearts of the men, the women look at her with envy. Following this, she introduces Mito, who holds beauty, puts even Urara to shame, making her a bit jealous. After this, she introduces Suma, who gets the envy of all the onlooking students, gaining tons of booze. Hiding behind him are Megumi and Kanichi, who are surprised by the fans' reaction. He remembers the first time he had a battle within the arena, only being watched by dogs. Wonders how Suma has gained so many haters, to which Suma is unsure himself. Urara then begins the battle, telling the onlookers that the main course will be a meat don. Each side having their own kitchen on the stage, they have a chance to exchange words before they face off. Mito tries to get him pumped up, but Suma shows no weakness, telling her he is ready. Following this, Arena enters the arena, gaining the attention of a majority of the fans and chefs. They all wonder why someone of Suma's level would attract someone like Arena. They think it must be to see Mito. In reality, Arena just wants to see Suma be crushed. Urara then starts the battle, giving them a time limit to complete the meal. Mito starts off by presenting a large A5 ranked meat in front of the audience. She slices it with precise butchering skills, making it seem like she has trained in the sword for a lifetime. After cutting the meat, a perfect cut is revealed, making her think the match is over. Following this, Mito gets a bit too excited, going in and sniffing the meat. She declares to herself that she will cook the meat perfectly and make the ultimate dish. After this, she starts cooking by melting high-grade butter along the meat and seasoning it perfectly. She then entraps the flames within the meat, places it into the oven to cook it all the way through. After doing this, she relaxes herself a bit, decides to take a look at Suma. He watches as he slices up lettuce and pulls out meat from a grocery store bag. Before we continue, let's take a moment to answer the question of the day. How would you feel if you got your dad to get the most expensive steak for a cook-off and the other guy gets some cheap gas station crap? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in the next video. Now back to the recap. Everyone sees it as cheap and thinks Suma isn't taking the match seriously. They begin throwing their trash at Suma, making Mito think the match is already over. He begins to walk off stage but stops after smelling the meat he is cooking. Arena in specific compliments Mito after seeing her handle the temperature. She explains that Mito's tongue is able to perfectly gauge the temperature, giving her the skill to perfectly cook meat. After this, Mito shows off her skills, slicing the meat perfectly into bite-sized pieces. Mito becomes sure of her victory and decides to look over at Suma's cooking again. He doesn't respond, angering Mito to call him out for not responding to him. Suma counters her by telling her that he doesn't need to speak, actions speaking louder than words. He then flips his meat and the smell overwhelms Mito, making her question her own dish. The timer ticks down and finally announces the end of the first half of cooking. Mito presents her dish to the judges first, making them and the audience impressed by the smell and sight. Move on to taste the meal and become delighted that they chose this job. One of the judges looks down at the meat and realizes how much precision went into cooking this meat. She stands firmly, making Arena proud of her underling, sure of Suma's defeat. All odds against him, Suma walks towards the judges, presents his dish to them. They look at his bowls and call them cheap, asking if he is serious about winning. However, once Suma opens the bowl, they stop trash talking and decide to try it. After one bite, they can't stop, scarfing down the entirety of the dish. Mito becomes stunned as she watches the judges eat like starved animals. They all praise the dish, saying they have tasted nothing like it before. Although the sauce and rice pair, well, Mito is still sure of her victory, having better meat. Instead, however, Suma presents a hand-picked plum flavoring and makes the meat take on an entirely new flavor. Judges become impressed and decide to continue eating their meal. After they finish it, they all ask for seconds, making Mito feel like she lost. She inspects her meal and sees they didn't even finish it, making her wonder what went wrong. Suma explains to her that although her meat is more expensive, he didn't cook it as well as his. Mito is still unsure of his dish. Instead of telling her with words, he decides to present her a bowl. She becomes stunned that someone like him would directly challenge her like this, but she decides to try it. After just one bite, she starts to realize what the hype was about, finishing it all instantly. She starts talking to the food, and it shows her a past memory she has. She remembers when she received a teddy bear, but it was ripped up by her father, telling her to become stronger. Since that day, Mito had never felt defeat like this, except this time she gets to taste her defeat. She decides to fold and become enlightened thanks to the food. The judges then announce Suma's victory, making Arina disappointed. Arina decides to evict Mito after seeing her lose to someone like Suma. After this, Suma goes and asks Mito if he can try her dish, making her feel important. Episode 8. Later this week, Suma is presented with a pamphlet informing him of a training camp. Dorm's mates them come to him and explain the camp to him better. Located in a remote mountain, they are forced to cook together and make the ultimate dish. Fail to get a passing score by the end of the training, are instantly expelled. Ishiki then approaches the group, informs them that this is when things really get serious. Tells them to be careful going forward, wanting each of them to pass. After hearing this, Megumi faints, causing the others to freak out. Suma, on the other hand, is completely relaxed, sure that he will easily pass the training. Ishiki assures them as well, determined to help them hone their skills before they leave. Following this, Ishiki leaves and leaves everyone to get to work in their own way. Arina, as well, is seen preparing for this training camp along with her assistant. Eventually, the day arrives where they head off to the camp, and Suma is excited. Although the other members are still unsure of their success, they board the bus anyways. Once they arrive, they are stunned to see a massive hotel being used as their school's training grounds. Maru explains to the others that all of the other hotels in the area are also owned by their academy. In order to stay in this hotel, however, they must pass the first test to earn their rights inside. Upon entering the hotel, they see a large number of students awaiting the start of the camp like them. While everyone is stressed, Suma sees Mito and decides to spit some game on her. She gets embarrassed, but Suma continues talking to her, drawing the attention of others. Following this, the teacher who never smiles enters the stage and explains their missions. Firstly, each student will have to get a passing grade in order to proceed. With this knowledge, he introduces a group of alumni from their academy that will be assisting him in their test. The chefs enter the stage and one of them instantly expels a student, tells him that his hair stinks, so he needs to leave because of his bad hygiene. The student attempts to protest his decision. The man doesn't back down, expelling him for real. After this, Suma wonders who these chefs are, to which some nerd behind him explains them. Each is famous in their own way, having captivated their own techniques to make the most exquisite food. One of the chefs tries to hit on Megumi. The girl chef stops him, acting like she's going to save her, however she does the same. Following this, a man enters the stage and is recognized as one of the best chefs around the world, Gin. With a full row of the best chefs in the world, the students wonder if they will be able to compete with the likes of them. Gin then announces what they will be doing, explaining that they will be getting into groups and working under a chef. Suma gets into his group and learns his chef is the woman who hit on Megumi earlier. Then he is approached by a new character. Having blonde hair and a fat brother behind him, stands atop of Suma's foot. Before things get too intense, the teacher stops them from fighting and asks them to make a dish for her. She tells them to go find ingredients in the forest and cook her something good. Everyone wonders if they can do it, but decide to give it a try at least. She informs them that they are within a closed area. If they leave, they will be disqualified. With only 2 hours to go, they rush to figure out what they will be cooking. Everyone then rushes out of the kitchen and goes to get their ingredients except Suma and Takumi. The blonde man directly challenges Suma to a cook-off and asks the teacher to grade their dishes. She informs him that she will obviously do this, making Takumi run off embarrassed. Following this, everyone runs around looking for the perfect ingredients, missing the main point of the exam. Only the teacher knows this, however. Making all of the students continue searching for ingredients effortlessly. Suma, however, wonders if there is some kind of twist to the goal. Following this, he catches a fish and heads back to the kitchen to find Takumi getting back as well. After getting back, Takumi announces that he has better food than anyone else, presenting a duck to the class. They wonder how he got something like this, making even Suma cower down. They then begin getting to work on the duck, slicing it with perfect precision. Takumi then formally introduces himself to Suma and informs him that he has been working at an Italian restaurant for a long time. He tells Suma that he won't give him the title of #1 easily. Bringing out a massive knife, he slices up all the ingredients with absolute absolute perfection, switching off with his brother after a while. The two continue cooking and preparing everything with such precision, makes Suma seem like an amateur. They then present their dish to the teacher. She enlightens them with their meal. She thinks of a duck man singing opera while embracing her as she eats the meal. Following this, some students notice a sauce they made and call him out for cheating. Takumi puts their claims down quickly, however, explaining how he made the sauce. The other students become impressed by their skills, gather such a variety of items, and give them their respect. Even the teacher is sure that they will be the best dish put together, telling them they passed. Suma, however, doesn't seem fazed, getting ready to present his own dish. Episode 9. Flashback 3 years ago, and Takumi was working within a top-class restaurant in Italy, gaining the attraction of all the women. Despite all of the advances made on him, he never shied from his goal, devoting himself to cooking. When he was working at the restaurant in Italy, his uncle decided to enroll him in the culinary school to hopefully get his skills better. After discussing it together, Takumi decided to enter the school with his brother, quickly climbing the ranks. Despite it being one of the top academies, he never had someone who really challenged him, making Suma the perfect rival. Ever since he first saw him at the opening ceremony, Takumi vowed to take him down. They show this by impressing not only the entirety of class, but also the class, making them seem on a different level. Takumi then reminds Suma of the competition, asking the teacher to compare the two of their dishes, then informs them that whoever loses will have to kneel before the other, declare them the better chef to spice things up a bit. Suma takes on their challenge but realizes it won't be easy, preparing them perfectly. Suma thinks what he can do but remembers something Takumi said earlier, giving him a hint. Writes down a list of ingredients for Megumi, leaves to look for the main dish, approaches the teacher, Inui, and asks her if he can use anything he wants. After she confirms he can use anything, he snags her rice crackers for himself. Following this, Suma runs off into the forest to find his main ingredient, finds a group of chickens, then hunts down their eggs. He steals a handful and heads back to find the other students failing their tests. They all realize that Takumi was just that amazing to impress the likes of her. Nui sits there sipping her tea, wondering when someone will bring her something good. Following this, Takumi gets impatient, wanting Suma to get back in time to cook his dish. He looks down at the rice crackers and wonders what he will make with them until Suma enters the room. Suma grabs the crackers from him and begins to prepare his dish for Inui. Suma then gives Megumi instructions on what she is cooking, informing her they are making the ultimate dish. With it all on the line, they use fish, eggs, and crackers to make a fried fish recipe. Thanks to the various ingredients that they gathered in the forest, they make a delicious-looking meal. Nui then goes in to try it, and instantly becomes overwhelmed by its immense flavor. Impressed, she compliments how Suma was able to mix different textures in such a short time. Not only did he make a unique salt, but he added in a hint of spice to make it balanced. As she eats the dish, Inui becomes impressed, calling it one of the best dishes a student has ever made for her. As she continues eating, she becomes overcome by how good it is, making her scream sounds of joy. Megumi asks Suma how he was able to cook such a good dish in such a short time, her having done nothing. Suma explains it to her, tells her that it is a family special dish that he has perfected. Takumi takes notice of the absurd name and calls Suma out, telling him he just got lucky. The two start to argue while Inui simply admires Suma's cooking, calling him a pro. He then announces that he has also passed her test, making him the second person in their class to pass. Following this, the test finishes, and only a few people in the class pass, eventually causing Takumi to ask for the victor of their battle. She tries to give them an answer but changes her mind, unsure which is better. Following this, he explains why the other is better, but changes her mind again until she gets a phone call. Another teacher is on the phone telling her to get back to the hotel already, them having exceeded the time limit. Suma then asks her again who the victor was. She runs off, unable to decide herself. Suma accepts this. However, Takumi informs him one day they will battle again with it all on the line in a cooking battle. Following this, they get on the bus. Takumi sits right next to Suma, making his last words seem foolish. Takumi decides to sit quietly about how Suma was able to hold his own against him. He declares Suma a rival, hoping to be able to challenge him again. Suma, on the other hand, thinks about Takumi's skills, wondering if would have improved as much as he has if he didn't go to this academy. Eventually, Suma gets back and meets with his roommates where they talk about the future. Having won their stay into the hotel, they all get to use the hotel's amenities to the max. They all head inside, hoping to take a bath or use the pool. They are greeted by bodybuilders. Form the group, they will be cooking lots of food for guests in order to increase their stamina. They are unable to cook for these guests. They will instantly fail, so they get to work. While some struggle, others hold their ground. They all become stronger in the process. Although most people struggle, Suma finishes super fast, having worked in a busy restaurant his whole life. After finishing his work, he heads to the pool, hoping to relax for once. As he enters the bath, he is stunned to be greeted by Arena, having entered the men's side of the bath. Episode 10. While Suma encounters this unfortunate fate, others cook their own dishes for the men, still not being finished. Megumi, in particular, cooks a meal that makes the guests pleased, giving her a confidence boost. Going back to Suma, once he knocked Arina down, she instantly got mad at him. He tried to give her some help getting up, however she treated him rudely, making Suma wonder what she is upset about. Tells her he heard her singing, making her embarrassed and start to talk big to Suma. Arina informs him that she doesn't have to waste her time with the stuff he does, getting to enjoy the amenities. Following this, Arina's assistant runs over and asks Suma what's going on, to which Suma tells her he pushes Arina over. She gets the wrong idea, and things spiral out of hand until Suma decides to leave. After this, Arina's assistant presents her with cards, but she declines them. Suma, on the other hand, enters his side of the bath and is greeted by a buff figure. Notices him as Gin. The two instantly start talking like old friends. Gin tells him that last year's students weren't as good as this year, except for one student. Having impressed him from the start, Ishiki earned Gin's approval, earning him the 7th seat. Arina then comes up in conversation, and Gin starts to reveal more about her to Suma. He explains that ever since she was a child, he's been able to differentiate spices and salts from across the world. Because of this skill, she earned the nickname God Tongue and is said to be the youngest chef with the most talent. Gin explains although she has all this talent, Aacademy is still a difficult place, potentially falling. Kumi then arrives and sees Gin and Suma talking, making him stunned. Gin decides to leave, seeing the second student arrive while giving Suma a firm handshake. As he leaves, Takumi questions Suma on how he is so acquainted with Gin, mentioning his last name. Gin overhears this and makes a disturbing face, showing he knows something about Suma's family. The girls, on the other hand, all head to bathe together after finishing their cooking for the day. While within the bath, they do what girls always do, a whole lot of nothing, eventually leaving. After leaving, they arrive at their fancy room where Yuki decides to throw it back in celebration. Maru enters their room as well, asking if they can leave the room, it being his room. After he asks this, a bunch more people enter, and it becomes a party. Maru ends up passing out, leaving some of the others, including Suma, to talk amongst themselves. Megumi shares with the others that she is always anxious while cooking. However, Suma got rid of that fear. She informs the others that slowly she's being able to express herself and show off her true skills. The others then tell her that she is getting better, and this makes her happy. However, the next day when she goes to present her dish, the teacher has a bad response. Before this happens, they enter his class and are presented with a course they must cook. He presents to them a recipe made by himself, being a French recipe. Although they have worked as a team this entire time, he seems to have caught on to some students' antics. Tells everyone that they must see even their partners as enemies to ensure no one passed by mistake. Following this, all of the students enter a panic, getting all the ingredients they can. Gumi, being a frail girl, gets scared to get her goods at first. She powers her way through. After securing everything she needs but the cauliflower, sure she will be able to cook a good dish. Upon arriving, she is stunned to find no good cauliflower left, making her wonder how to figure it out. She looks around and eventually remembers one of the times that Suma taught her a trick. She decides to go with that. After this, a pair tries to share information between each other. The teacher notices and instantly fails them. While this match is going on, Gin stops by to see how Suma is doing. After inspecting, he becomes sure of Suma's success. During this, everyone cooks their own meals, trying to continue advancing, while others may have it easy. Suma's teacher fails chefs left and right, making it seem impossible to pass. Eventually, he arrives and presents his dish to him, making him give it a try. Following his initial smile, he realizes Suma's cooking is superior, so he passes him. After this, Suma goes back to his table to watch Megumi cook her dish, becoming impressed by her skill. Megumi eventually finishes and presents her dish to the teacher, her being the final participant. Despite its glamorous appearance, once the teacher takes a bite, he decides to fail Megumi. Unsure of why she failed, Megumi questions the teacher, and he explains it is because she slightly mis-seasoned the cauliflower. He explains that he gave her a recipe and she didn't follow it, making it a failure. Soma doesn't take this lightly, however, approaching the teacher with anger. He calls him out, saying if he can't take some change, he shouldn't be a teacher. The teacher then informs Suma that he put faulty cauliflower on purpose, so more people would fail. He explains it as being a way to weed out the people who don't hustle. Suma continues to protest, but this causes the teacher to threaten him, telling him he can fire him if he wants. Gumi gets scared of Suma, so she rushes to his side and tells him to cool down. This angers Suma even more, so he decides to do the last thing he can think of to save her. Suma pulls off his bandages and asks if he will consider a cooking battle to decide her future enrollment. Episode 11. He smirks and remembers doing cooking battles back in his days as a student at the school. The other students question Suma's sanity, saying the teacher used to be an Elite 10 member when he was a student. He then tries to deny the challenge, however Gin appears, telling him not to deny it just yet. Inui enters the room and decides to join in on the conversation, trying Megumi's dish, tries to convince him to pass her and put this to the side. However, Gin has another idea. He decides to try and let Megumi prove her worth, getting another chance. Gin tells Suma he will allow an unofficial cooking battle against the teacher, Shinomiya. Shinomiya listens to Gin, decides to agree to the duel, telling Suma if he loses, he will be expelled. Suma is given some time to prepare, so he walks around with Megumi, talking about their future plans. He asks Megumi what she thinks they should do, which causes her to start crying. She feels bad for bringing Suma into this, him already having passed Shinomiya's test. Suma assures her that it was his own decision to challenge him, her not being the main reason. Suma informs her that now isn't her time to leave the school, assuring her he will win. Later that day, the other dorm members talk amongst each other, wondering where Suma and Megumi are. They consider Megumi losing, then realize the merits they have already achieved. They are sure nothing bad happened. Suma, on the contrary, follows Gin into the basement of the hotel to begin his cooking battle. Upon arrival, they are greeted by 4 other alumni, all enlisted to watch as judges. Gin then announces the rules to the others, having 2 hours to cook their dish from start to finish. Gin then announces that Megumi will be the main cook with Suma as the support. Suma, of course, protests this, him having initiated the challenge and put his bet on himself. Gin informs him that if she deserves to pass, then she will prove it here and now. Megumi then walks over to her kitchen and gets nervous, having lots of people watching her cook. Shinomiya continues by talking trash to the others despite him facing newbies at the academy he graduated from. Before starting, Megumi looks over and wonders if she can beat someone like Shinomiya, a chef with a fine dining restaurant in Paris. While the battle is going on, Suma tries his hardest to assist Megumi, but Gin stops him. Gin tells him he can't give her a recipe, making sure he can't carry her to another win. Suma takes this as advice, going over to Megumi and slapping her hands. After being slapped, Megumi snaps out of it, realizes she needs to at least try. Suma informs her that she needs to forget about competing against Shinomiya, rather focus on serving a delicious plate. These words seem to resonate with Megumi, bringing her to tears while thinking about how much food has impacted her life. As a child, her mom used to always cook her meals, teaching her how to cook in the process. After remembering this, she begins cooking, to which Shinomiya laughs at them for just starting to cook. Suma counters his comment, but Megumi tells him it's all right, her having a great idea. The other dorm members, on the other hand, are shocked to learn of the battle going on between Suma and the alumni. Suma, on the other hand, is still sure of his victory, giving words of encouragement to Megumi. They finally begin cooking, while Shinomiya is already waiting for it to finish cooking. They prep the ingredients, he gets more and more sure of his victory. Suddenly, Suma becomes a master side chef, prepping and slicing everything she could possibly need. With Suma supporting her at rocket speed, Megumi is able to cook quickly, letting her shine. The alumni, on the other hand, are interested in more than just Megumi, looking at Suma's background as well. Finally, they are finished, and Shinomiya starts, presenting his dish to the others. Giving a homemade French dish to the judges, they are happy to have something reliable they can enjoy. After just one bite, it becomes clear why Shinomiya was able to graduate from the academy as an Elite 10 member. Explains how he mixed the spices and ingredients to ultimately create this masterpiece. Even Gin joins on, taking a bite of the dish, enjoying it fully. Gin starts to talk about Shinomiya, his achievements after he graduated. He opened a gourmet restaurant in France that ended up shocking the country. Although Megumi's dish hasn't been graded, it seems impossible to beat with how thoroughly the judges are enjoying this meal. The dish gets so good that they become magical cabbage girls, unlocking their hidden nature. Episode 12. Once they finish eating this, they move on to Megumi, taking a bite of the dish she prepared for them. Although they may not give the same reaction, the judges are definitely impressed by how well the food is cooked. Using 2 different sauces, Megumi made a new flavor befitting the refined texture of the dish. One of the judges comments that with all the different flavors, you can enjoy the dish 13 different ways. They question Megumi, wondering how she came up with something so complex. She explains to them that her mother taught her how to prepare the different ingredients and bring out their true flavors. In recognizes her talents, calling her dish comparable to Shinomiya in flavor. Nui then takes a bite, compares Shinomiya as the villain and Megumi the hero. They all begin to think of Megumi in a good manner, calling Shinomiya nothing more than a scumbag. As the conversation goes on, they start to talk about who will be victorious in the cooking battle, with each judge having 1 vote. Each vote matters a ton. As the votes continue, Megumi begins praying that she somehow is able to continue her enrollment at the academy. She remembers all of her memories with Suma, wanting to continue cooking with him in the future. Unfortunately, however, when Megumi opens her eyes, all of the votes go to Shinomiya. Gin announces that the winner was obvious, Shinomiya clearly being better. Instead of being angry, Suma comforts Megumi, telling her she did well. Begins to cry, realizing that Suma has helped her so much, she just failed him. Despite all the help he gave her, she still was unable to win even a single alumni's votes. Shinmiya then rubs it in, telling her to pack her bags and leave the campus. Gin then approaches and gives a coin to Megumi, telling Shinomiya he wants to appreciate her dish. Shinomiya protests, but eventually remembers a time back when he was enrolled in the Aacademy. With him being committed to France, all of the other students were shocked to say goodbye. Shinomiya, however, has his eyes set on a goal, wanting to win a medal in France. His goal was to open a Japanese restaurant in France and win the medal. After impressing judges and gaining recognition, other chefs began to envy him. This eventually started to mess up his food, leading to his business getting a bad reputation. Unsure of how he was going to move forward, eventually kicked out all the other chefs, relying on only himself. He would later go on to hire more chefs, but they were never enough, always trying to change his recipes. However, when they listened, they definitely impressed, serving magical dishes to the French. Shinomiya then went on to win the medal he dreamt of, giving him nothing else to achieve. Gin points this out by telling Shinomiya since he won that medal, he hasn't progressed as a chef at all. Shinomiya protests, but decides to try Megumi's dish to see what Gin is fighting with him about. He tries one bite and realizes so many issues, but eventually overcomes him. He tastes the delicacy it took to make, being a grassy field he grew up in. Being a problem child, he would constantly get into fights, making his mom always worry for him. Although she would worry, things always ended up well. He enjoyed his peaceful life. Overall, he describes the taste of the meal to motherly love, giving a coin of his own to her dish. Shinomiya then approaches Megumi, telling her she cooked a good dish. He asks her why she used a certain spice, to which she explains the reason to him. She knew they were tasting lots of spices the day before, so she decided to go easy on it, making the tongue relaxed when tasting it. Following this, Inui enters the competition and puts a coin of her own on Megumi, making it tied 3-3 now. Megumi starts to get excited, but Shinomiya is rather disappointed, trying to act all cool to the others. Concluding this, Gin tells Megumi that her dish gained 3 votes, letting her stay in the academy. Suma congratulates her while Gin walks away like a beast, having just saved Megumi from failing. Later that night, when Suma and Megumi get finished with the battle, they realize they forgot about the time. Megumi checks her phone and sees tons of missed calls, so she rushes off, thanking Suma. Suma, however, realizes his defeat, so he punches the wall in frustration to relieve some of the anger he has pent up.